fundamentals are quite strong in the sense that what we are anticipating is a normalization in services consumption rather than anything more sinister. And at the same time, you're already starting to see rates relief come through on some of the sectors which have kind of borne the brunt of policy tightening. And think of SMEs, think of manufacturing, think of all of the rate sensitives. So they start getting some respite. So we think there's going to be a pretty benign handover from services, from consumption, which is going to normalize but not fall off a cliff, while at the same time other sectors begin to stabilize. And this is where you then put against that the election outcome and what it means for growth. And here we think there is no outcome of the four plausible outcomes. I'd say four because it's important to consider the makeup of the government. It's not just the presidency, because that's where the policy divide really kicks in. And none of these outcomes for us is a growth positive. Under a Trump presidency, we see that as being inflationary on the back of his focus on immigration, on tariffs. But we don't see any outcome as being particularly growth positive. And that's why bonds have been behaving the way they have been. Yields essentially are reacting to the fact that under a Trump presidency, you're going to have to live with more inflation uncertainty and perhaps a spike higher in inflation. So I think that is warranted. Yeah. And we think we have more or less largely priced in a Trump presidency on bonds, but there's perhaps still another 20, 30 basis points to go under a red sweep scenario.
Arun, listen, this may sound like a silly question, and hopefully there are no such things as silly questions, but honestly, I don't have the answer to this, right? So I'm going to ask you because you're the expert. Investors and markets seem to be taking their cue from betting platforms. Is that necessarily the right thing to do? I mean, opinion polls, we know that, is too close to call, but it's not polls and the public, honestly, that decide the election. It's going to be the electoral college at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And that's very important to keep in mind, that we are still in a statistical tie as far as polls are concerned. We are still within the margin of error. Yes, there has been some movement in, especially in the swing states. One might believe that Trump has the momentum, but momentum doesn't cut it. We really need to see evidence for polls suggesting that there is a clear candidate who is ahead, and that is not the case today. So if you're going primarily on the back of polls, this is still a 50-50 outcome. And that is why it is very important that we don't take bets on the direction of how this is going to go, but rather err on the side of fundamentals once again. And that's why we like trades, which would make sense from a fundamental standpoint, but would have an additional added kicker if the outcome goes one way or the other.